Neymar's tip saves a waitress from being evicted. How will this story turn out? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. Camila's feet ached as she navigated the narrow spaces between the tables of the small cafe on the outskirts of the bustling city. The faded walls and worn furniture mirrored the weariness etched on her face, but her smile never wavered as she greeted each customer with genuine warmth. The cafe, once a thriving local hotspot, had seen better days. The paint was chipping, the chairs creaked, and the menu hadn't been updated in years. But for Camila, it was more than just a place of employment. It was a lifeline, a means to keep a roof over her head and food on her table. As she wiped down a table, her mind drifted to the looming threat of eviction. Her landlord's words echoed in her head, a constant reminder of the precariousness of her situation. She had until the end of the week to come up with the rent money, or she'd be forced out of her tiny apartment and onto the unforgiving streets. The bell above the cafe door chimed, signaling the arrival of another customer. Camila looked up, plastering her signature smile on her face, ready to greet the newcomer with the same enthusiasm she showed everyone. The man who entered was casually dressed, his face partially obscured by a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He walked with a slight limp, his movements calculated and cautious, as if trying to avoid drawing attention to himself. Camila approached him, menus in hand. "Welcome to Sampaio's Cafe," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "Please, have a seat anywhere you'd like." The man nodded, his eyes meeting hers briefly before he settled into a booth in the corner. Camila placed the menu in front of him, her smile never faltering despite the exhaustion that weighed heavily on her shoulders. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" she asked, her pen poised over her notepad. "Just a black coffee, please," the man replied, his voice soft and slightly accented. Camila jotted down his order and hurried off to the kitchen, unaware that the unassuming customer she had just served was none other than Neymar, one of the most famous footballers in the world. As the evening wore on, Camila found herself running between tables, her feet screaming in protest with every step. The cafe was unusually busy, and she was the only waitress on shift. Her boss, Mr. Sampaio, had once again cut staff to save money, leaving Camila to bear the brunt of the work. She could feel Mr. Sampaio's eyes on her as she worked, his gaze critical and unforgiving. He was a harsh man, quick to criticize and slow to praise. He belittled Camila at every opportunity, his words cutting deep into her already fragile self-esteem. But Camila refused to let his cruelty break her. She held her head high, her smile never wavering as she attended to her customers' needs. She knew that every tip, every kind word, brought her one step closer to her goal of keeping her apartment and building a better life for herself. As the night drew to a close, Camila's heart sank as she counted her tips. Despite the busy shift, the money was far less than she had hoped for. Her mind raced as she calculated her expenses, the reality of her situation hitting her like a punch to the gut. She wouldn't have enough to cover rent. Not even close. Tears stung her eyes as she cleared the last few tables, her movements mechanical and numb. She felt like a failure, like all her hard work and sacrifices had been for nothing. As she approached the table where the quiet, unassuming man had sat, she noticed a folded piece of paper tucked under his empty coffee mug. Curious, she picked it up, her eyes widening as she unfolded it to reveal a message scrawled in neat, precise handwriting. "Thank you for your kindness and hard work. I hope this helps." Beneath the message was a tip so massive that it took Camila's breath away. It was more money than she had ever seen in one place, more than enough to cover her rent and then some. Camila's hands shook as she stared at the generous tip, her mind reeling with disbelief. She looked up, scanning the cafe for the mysterious customer, but he was nowhere to be seen. He had slipped out quietly, leaving behind not just financial relief, but a renewed faith in the kindness and generosity of strangers. As she clutched the money to her chest, Camila felt a wave of emotions wash over her. Relief, gratitude, and an overwhelming sense of hope that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to take a turn for the better. She tucked the tip safely into her pocket, a small smile playing on her lips as she finished her closing duties. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe again, like the weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders. The next morning, Camila arrived at the cafe early, a spring in her step and a lightness in her heart. She had paid her rent, and for the first time in months, she didn't have to worry about where she would sleep at night. As she tied her apron around her waist and began setting up for the day, she heard the bell above the door chime. She looked up, expecting to see one of the regulars, but instead found herself face to face with Mr. Sampaio. His face was twisted into a scowl, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Camila," he barked, his voice harsh and accusatory. "I need to speak with you in my office. Now." Camila's heart sank, a sense of dread washing over her. She had seen that look on Mr. Sampaio's face before, and it never boded well. She followed him into the cramped, cluttered space he called an office, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "It has come to my attention," Mr. Sampaio began, his voice dripping with disdain, "that you received a rather substantial tip last night, far more than any of your co-workers." Camila swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A customer left it for me. I don't know why." Mr. Sampaio leaned forward, his eyes boring into hers. "I don't believe in handouts, Camila, and I certainly don't believe in my employees taking advantage of our customers' generosity." He held out his hand, his meaning clear. "The tip, Camila. Hand it over." Camila's heart raced as she stared at Mr. Sampaio's outstretched hand, her mind reeling with the unfairness of his demand. The tip was hers, a gift from a kind stranger who had seen her struggles and chosen to help. It was a lifeline, a chance at a better future. But as she looked into Mr. Sampaio's cold, unyielding eyes, she knew she had no choice. He held all the power, and if she refused, she would surely lose her job. And then where would she be? With trembling hands, she reached into her pocket and withdrew the folded bills, placing them in Mr. Sampaio's palm. He snatched them away, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Good girl," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Now get back to work, and don't let me catch you accepting any more handouts. You're here to serve, not to be served." Camila nodded, her eyes downcast as she left the office. She felt like a part of her had been ripped away, like the hope and joy she had felt just moments before had been crushed under the weight of Mr. Sampaio's cruelty. But as she stepped back into the cafe, she squared her shoulders, a flicker of determination sparking in her heart. She would not let this break her. She would find a way to rise above, to build a better life for herself, no matter the obstacles in her path. Days turned into weeks, and Camila threw herself into her work with renewed vigor. She arrived early and stayed late, taking on extra shifts and responsibilities in the hopes of earning Mr. Sampaio's favor and, perhaps, a raise. But no matter how hard she worked, no matter how many customers complimented her service or left generous tips, Mr. Sampaio's attitude towards her never softened. He continued to belittle and berate her, his words chipping away at her self-esteem and her hope for the future. And then, one day, everything changed. It started like any other shift, with Camila rushing between tables, her feet aching and her smile strained. But as she approached a booth in the corner, she stopped short, her heart skipping a beat. There, sitting in the same spot he had occupied weeks before, was the mysterious customer who had left her the life-changing tip. He looked up as she approached, his eyes crinkling with recognition and warmth. "Hello again," he said, his voice soft and kind. "I was hoping I'd see you here." Camila swallowed hard, her voice trembling as she replied. "I never got the chance to thank you," she said, "for your generosity. It meant more to me than you could ever know." The man smiled, his eyes searching hers. "I know a little something about struggling to make ends meet," he said, "and I know how much a small act of kindness can mean in those moments." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card, handing it to her. "My name is Neymar," he said, "and I have a proposition for you." Camila stared at the business card in her hand, her eyes widening as she read the name emblazoned on the smooth, white surface. Neymar, the Neymar, one of the most famous footballers in the world, known for his incredible skill on the field and his generous philanthropy off of it. She looked up at him, her mind reeling with questions and disbelief. "I don't understand," she said. "What kind of proposition?" Neymar leaned forward, his eyes intense and sincere. "I own a chain of high-end restaurants," he said, "and I'm always on the lookout for talented, hard-working individuals to join my team. I've been watching you, Camila. I've seen how you treat every customer with kindness and respect, no matter how difficult the circumstances. And I believe you have the potential to do great things." He paused, his voice softening. "I want to offer you a job," he said, "as a manager at one of my restaurants, with full benefits, a competitive salary, and the opportunity to grow and advance within the company." Camila's heart raced, her mind spinning with the enormity of the offer. A chance to escape the endless cycle of poverty and struggle, to build a career and a future for herself. It was everything she had ever dreamed of. But as she opened her mouth to accept, a flicker of doubt crept into her mind. Could she really leave the cafe behind? Could she abandon the customers who had come to rely on her, the co-workers who had become like family? Neymar must have seen the hesitation in her eyes, because he reached out and took her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "I know it's a big decision," he said, "and I don't want you to feel pressured. Take some time to think about it." Camila nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Thank you," she said, "for believing in me, for giving me this chance." Neymar smiled, his eyes warm and understanding. "Everyone deserves a chance to shine," he said, "and I have a feeling you're going to do great things, Camila." With that, he stood and made his way out of the cafe, leaving Camila standing there, the business card clutched tightly in her hand. Over the next few days, Camila agonized over the decision. She knew that accepting Neymar's offer would mean leaving behind everything she had ever known, stepping out of her comfort zone and into a world of uncertainty and change. But as she watched Mr. Sampaio berate and belittle her co-workers, as she counted her meager tips and struggled to make ends meet, she realized that staying at the cafe would mean condemning herself to a life of misery and struggle. And so, with a heavy heart and a flicker of hope, she made her choice. Camila took a deep breath as she stepped into Mr. Sampaio's office, her hands trembling and her heart racing. She had rehearsed her speech 1,000 times, but now, standing before him, the words seemed to stick in her throat. "Mr. Sampaio," she began, her voice shaking, "I need to talk to you about something." He looked up from his desk, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "What is it, Camila? I don't have all day." She swallowed hard, her resolve strengthening. "I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice," she said. "I've been offered a job at another restaurant, and I've decided to accept." Mr. Sampaio's face twisted with rage, his fist slamming down on the desk. "You ungrateful little wretch," he snarled. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? By abandoning your responsibilities and your co-workers." Camila stood tall, her voice steady and clear. "You've done nothing for me, Mr. Sampaio. You've exploited me, belittled me, and treated me like I was worthless. But I'm not worthless. I'm talented and hardworking, and I deserve better than this." She turned to leave, her head held high. "I'll work my final 2 weeks, and then I'll be gone. And I hope that someday, you'll learn to treat your employees with the respect and dignity they deserve." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity and emotion. Camila worked her final shifts at the cafe, saying goodbye to the customers and co-workers who had become like family. She packed up her tiny apartment, sorting through the few possessions she had accumulated over the years and deciding what to keep and what to leave behind. And then, on her last day, she walked out of the cafe for the final time, her heart full of gratitude and excitement for the future. Her first day at Neymar's restaurant was a whirlwind of new faces, new responsibilities, and new challenges. But Camila tackled each one with enthusiasm and determination, her hard work and dedication quickly earning her the respect and admiration of her colleagues. As the weeks turned into months, Camila found herself thriving in her new role. She was learning new skills, taking on new responsibilities, and building a career she could be proud of. And through it all, Neymar was there, offering guidance and support, his belief in her unwavering. One evening, as Camila was closing up the restaurant, Neymar stopped by, his eyes shining with pride and admiration. "I knew you would do great things here, Camila," he said, "but you've exceeded even my highest expectations." Camila felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, her heart swelling with gratitude and joy. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "Without your belief in me, your support. You changed my life, Neymar." He shook his head, his smile warm and sincere. "No, Camila, you changed your own life. You had the strength, the talent, and the determination all along. All I did was give you the opportunity to let it shine." As Camila locked up the restaurant and stepped out into the cool night air, she felt a sense of peace and purpose wash over her. She had come so far from the struggling waitress she had once been, and she knew that her journey was only just beginning. Years later, Camila stood at the podium of a glittering ballroom, her eyes scanning the sea of faces before her. She was being honored for her work in the restaurant industry, for her dedication to mentoring and empowering young women from disadvantaged backgrounds. As she began her speech, her voice strong and clear, she thought back to the moment that had changed everything. The moment when a kind stranger had seen her potential and given her the chance to build a better life. "I stand before you tonight not just as a successful businesswoman, but as a testament to the power of kindness and generosity," she said. "To the idea that a single act of compassion can change the course of a person's life." She paused, her eyes shining with emotion. "I was once a struggling waitress, working long hours for little pay and even less respect. But then, someone saw something in me. Someone believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. That someone was Neymar, and his kindness, his generosity, and his belief in me set me on a path I never could have imagined. A path that led me here to this moment, to this stage." As the crowd erupted in applause, Camila felt a sense of gratitude and humility wash over her. She knew that her success was not just her own, but a testament to the power of the human spirit. A reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and kindness could light the way. As she stepped down from the podium, Camila was surrounded by well-wishers and admirers, each eager to share their own stories of struggle and triumph. And as she listened, as she offered words of encouragement and support, she knew that her journey was not over, but rather, just beginning. For she had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that in lifting up others, we lift up ourselves. That in giving hope to the hopeless, we find our own sense of purpose and meaning. And so, with a heart full of gratitude and a spirit full of determination, Camila set out to continue her mission, to be a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope for all those who had lost their way. For she knew that every small act of kindness, every gesture of compassion, had the power to change the world. And she was determined to do just that, one person, one moment, one day at a time. As she walked out into the night, the city lights twinkling like stars above her, Camila felt a sense of peace and purpose wash over her. She had come so far, overcome so much, and she knew that her journey was far from over. But she also knew that she was not alone, that there were countless others like her, fighting their own battles, chasing their own dreams, and that together, they could build a world of kindness, of compassion, of hope. A world where every struggling waitress, every forgotten soul, every lost and lonely heart could find their way to a better tomorrow. A world where the power of a single act of kindness could change everything. And with that knowledge, that hope, that unshakable belief in the goodness of the human spirit, Camila stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to be the change she wished to see in the world, one small act of kindness at a time.